Picture this. You're sitting at a fancy restaurant, crystal chandeliers sparkling above, celebrating the biggest moment of your life, your college graduation. You've clawed your way through 5 brutal years, working 3 jobs, eating instant noodles, and drowning in debt, all while your family swore they were scraping by. Then, your grandmother, eyes glowing with pride, raises her glass and says, "I hope the $3,000 a month helped you shine, sweetheart." The table freezes. Your heart stops. What money? You never saw a dime. The room spins as you realize, your parents, the ones who preached, were broke, have been pocketing $180,000 meant for you. $180,000. While you were skipping meals and crying over loan papers, they were sipping wine and driving a new Lexus. The betrayal cuts like a knife. How could they lie to your face for years? What else are they hiding? Drop a comment right now. Have you ever been stabbed in the back by family? Hit that subscribe button to join this insane ride, because this is just the start. I'm Abigail Turner. I'm 24 years old. And tonight, my so-called family unraveled in ways I never saw coming. I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, where cul-de-sacs and dogwood trees defined our quiet neighborhood. My parents, Linda and Michael Turner, ran a small real estate agency, always grumbling about tight budgets and the rising costs of living in the city. Our split-level house had a creaky porch and a driveway where Dad's rusty Ford F-150 sat next to Mom's minivan. "We're just getting by," they'd say over dinner, rattling off expenses, mortgage, utilities, groceries. I soaked it up, never questioning their size or the way they clipped coupons. My younger brother, Ethan, 19, was different. He floated through life with new Air Jordans and a carefree grin, now a freshman at Emory University. I wore thrift store jeans and assumed he was just better at budgeting. The one person who made me feel truly seen was my grandmother, Margaret, who lived 50 miles south in Macon. She'd roll up in her silver Buick, arms full of peach cobbler and novels she'd picked out for me. "You're destined for big things," she'd say, her voice warm, unlike my parents, who were often distracted by client calls or their phones. Those visits kept me grounded. College at Georgia Tech was a different story, a grueling marathon I barely survived. My partial scholarship covered a fraction of the $40,000 yearly tuition, and my parents laid it out plain: "We can't afford much. You'll need loans and a job." I dove in, heart set on engineering. By my second year, I was working 3 jobs, delivering Uber Eats, slinging drinks at a gritty bar in East Atlanta, and tutoring calculus online. My home was a $650 a month basement apartment off Ponce de Leon Avenue, 450 square feet of peeling paint and a furnace that died every winter. I lived on instant oatmeal and Red Bull, my checking account hovering around $150. One February, my laptop crashed before midterms, and I begged my parents for $200 to fix it. "We're tapped out," Mom said, her voice clipped. I spent nights in the library, fighting tears. The $60,000 in student loans piled up, a constant weight on my chest. I'd call home, pleading for $75 to cover a doctor's visit, only to hear Dad say, "Money's tight, kid." I believed them, pushing through migraines and sleepless nights. After 5 years, crossing that graduation stage felt like climbing Everest. As I headed to the dinner that night, Margaret's proud smile gave me a flicker of hope. I had no clue the truth was about to blow my world apart. Walking into Le Pierre, Atlanta's swankiest restaurant, felt like stepping into a different world. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over white tablecloths, and the air smelled of truffle oil and money. I smoothed the borrowed dress I'd worn to graduation, my stomach twisting with unease. This place was light years from my moldy basement apartment, where I'd scraped by on $150 a month after rent. My parents, Linda and Michael, led the way, all smiles, as if they dined like this every week. "Tonight's for you," Dad said, waving off my hesitant glance at the menu's $75 steak. I forced a smile, but something felt off. How could they afford this when they'd cried broke every time I needed $50 for gas? My brother, Ethan, slouched in his chair, scrolling through his phone, his new $1,200 iPhone 16 glinting under the lights. He'd just come back from a spring break trip to Miami, posting beach selfies while I'd worked double shifts at the bar. "Put that away, Ethan," Mom said, but her tone was indulgent, not scolding. I glanced at her wrist. A new gold bracelet sparkled next to her manicured nails. My mind flashed to last fall, when I'd called home begging for $120 to replace a busted textbook. "We're maxed out," she'd said, voice tight. Yet here she was, dripping in jewelry, ordering a $300 bottle of Bordeaux like it was water. Margaret, my grandmother, arrived a few minutes later, her warm presence easing my nerves. "You look radiant," she said, hugging me tightly, her floral perfume grounding me. She settled next to me, chatting about my engineering degree and the job interviews I had lined up. But as the appetizers arrived, $1.45 shrimp cocktails and caviar for the table, my unease grew. Dad was laughing too loudly, Mom kept checking her reflection in a compact mirror, and Ethan ordered a $60 lobster roll without a glance at the price. I caught Sarah, my mom's sister, watching me with a furrowed brow. "You holding up okay?" she asked, her voice low. "This place is a lot," I whispered back, my fingers gripping the napkin in my lap. A memory hit me like a punch. 2 years ago, I'd gotten a flat tire on I-85, stranded in a Georgia downpour. I'd called Dad, soaked and shivering, asking for $200 to cover the repair. "We don't have it, Abby," he'd said, his voice flat. "Figure it out." I'd used my last $150 from tips and skipped groceries for a week, living on stale crackers. Now, watching Dad tip the waiter a crisp $50 bill for bringing extra bread, my stomach churned. Their real estate business was small. How were they bankrolling this? The new Lexus I'd seen in their driveway last month flashed in my mind, along with Mom's recent girls' trip to Savannah she'd called off a work conference. "Everything okay, sweetie?" Mom asked, catching my stare. Her smile was too tight, her eyes darting to Dad. "Just taking it all in," I said, my voice barely steady. Sarah leaned closer, her hand brushing mine. "You deserve this night," she said, but her tone carried a warning, like she knew something I didn't. My heart pounded as the waiter refilled our glasses. The opulence around me felt like a lie, and deep down, I sensed a truth clawing its way to the surface. I had no idea how close I was to losing everything I thought I knew about my family. The clink of wine glasses at Le Pierre faded as our main courses arrived, the table laden with $80 filet mignon and butter-drenched scallops. My stomach twisted, not from hunger but from the gnawing suspicion that had been building all night. Linda, my mom, laughed too brightly, recounting a client's offer on a Buckhead condo, while Michael, my dad, nodded, his new Rolex catching the chandelier's glow. Ethan, my brother, scrolled through Instagram, oblivious, his $60 lobster roll barely touched. I pushed a piece of salmon around my plate, the $45 price tag burning in my mind. How could they afford this when I'd starved on instant oatmeal for years? Sarah, my aunt, caught my eye again, her expression unreadable but heavy with concern. Then Margaret, my grandmother, set down her fork and turned to me, her smile radiant. "Sweetheart, I've been meaning to ask, how did the $3,000 a month help you through school? I hope it gave you some breathing room." The words hit like a freight train. My fork clattered to the plate. The restaurant's hum vanished, leaving only a ringing in my ears. "What money?" I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. Margaret's face froze, confusion clouding her eyes. "The $3,000 I sent your parents every month for 5 years, she said slowly. "For your tuition, books, a decent apartment. All of it." My gaze snapped to Linda and Michael. Mom's wine glass froze midair, her face draining of color. Dad coughed, fumbling with his napkin. "Grandma," I said, my voice trembling, "I never got a dime." The table went deathly silent. Ethan's phone slipped from his hand, hitting the table with a thud. Sarah's jaw tightened, her eyes blazing at my parents. Margaret's voice turned sharp. "Linda, Michael, I sent you $180,000 for Abigail's education. Are you telling me she never saw it? Mom stammered, there's been a misunderstanding, but Dad cut her off, his voice strained. It went to family expenses, Margaret. You know how tough things have been. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that drew stares from nearby tables. Tough? I worked 40 hours a week while pulling all-nighters at Georgia Tech. I lived in a rat hole with no heat. I took out $60,000 in loans. My voice cracked, tears burning my eyes. You told me we were broke. Sarah leaned forward, her voice low and furious. You bought a Lexus. You took that Savannah trip. Where did Abigail's money go? Ethan, wide-eyed, muttered, wait, what's going on? But the real bombshell came when Margaret's hands shook, her voice icy. There's more. I found loan documents in your names, $25,000 taken out in Abigail's name. She didn't sign them, did she? My heart stopped. Fraud. They hadn't just stolen from me, they'd forged my identity. You faked loans in my name? I shouted, standing so fast my chair scraped the floor. Diners turned, whispering. Mom's eyes darted, desperate. Abigail, calm down, we were going to pay it back, pay it back? I screamed, tears streaming. You watched me starve while you lived like kings. Dad reached for me, but I yanked away. Don't touch me. I grabbed my purse, my vision blurring, and stumbled toward the exit, Margaret calling after me. The weight of their betrayal crushed me, 5 years of lies, exposed in a single night. As I pushed through the glass doors into Atlanta's humid air, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The humid Atlanta night hit me like a wall as I burst out of Pierre, my borrowed heels clicking unevenly on the pavement. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the neon lights of Peachtree Street. My parents, Linda and Michael, had stolen $180,000 meant for my education, forged $25,000 in loans under my name, and watched me scrape by in a moldy basement for 5 years. The betrayal felt like a physical weight, crushing my chest. I fumbled with my car keys, a beat-up 2008 Honda Civic parked 3 blocks away because valet was $20 I couldn't spare. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys, sobbing as I knelt to grab them. How could they lie to me, to Margaret, for so long? Inside my car, rain began to patter on the windshield, mirroring the storm in my head. I gripped the steering wheel, replaying Margaret's words, $3,000 a month, $180,000 total. I'd lived on $600 a month in a 450-square-foot dump, skipping doctor visits to save $30 copays, while they bought a Lexus and lobster rolls. And the forged loans? My credit, my future, tainted by their fraud. They're not my family, I whispered, the words tasting like ash. My phone buzzed, texts from Ethan, then Sarah, then Margaret. Abigail, where are you? My grandmother's message read. I couldn't face her yet, not with this pain ripping me apart. I drove aimlessly, the rain now a downpour, wipers squeaking. My mind churned, every late-night shift at the bar, every ramen dinner, every time I'd begged for $100 and heard, we're broke. Lies. All lies. I pulled into a Waffle House parking lot, the neon sign glowing through the storm. Inside, I slid into a booth, my makeup smudged, dress damp. The waitress, a kind woman with a name tag reading, Tina, brought me coffee without asking. Rough night, hon, she said. I nodded, unable to speak. My phone buzzed again, Margaret, calling. This time, I answered. Abigail, thank God, she said, her voice thick with worry. I'm at a Waffle House, I managed. I can't go back there. I'm coming, Margaret said. And Sarah's with me. We're not letting this go. 30 minutes later, they arrived, Margaret's silver Buick pulling up beside my Civic. Sarah slid into the booth first, her eyes fierce. Your parents crossed a line, she said, gripping my hand. This isn't just money, it's fraud, Abigail. Margaret sat beside me, her face etched with guilt and rage. I trusted them, she said, her voice breaking. I thought I was helping you live better, not this. I wiped my eyes. You didn't know, Grandma. None of us did. Sarah leaned in, her voice steady. We need to confront them. Tonight. They don't get to hide. I hesitated, my heart pounding. What if they lie again? I asked. Margaret's eyes hardened. They won't, not with me there. I have every bank transfer, every email they sent thanking me for helping Abigail. They're done. I nodded, a spark of resolve cutting through my grief. Let's go, I said, my voice shaky but firm. We drove to my parents' house in Decatur, 5 miles away, the rain relentless. Linda and Michael were in the living room, their faces pale as we walked in. Ethan sat on the couch, looking shell-shocked. Abigail, let's talk calmly, Mom started, but I cut her off. Calmly? You stole $180,000. You forged loans in my name. Dad raised his hands. It wasn't stealing, we used it for the family. The business was sinking. Sarah scoffed. A sinking business buys a $50,000 SUV? Ethan's head snapped up. You told me we were fine, he said, his voice small. I turned to him. They lied to us both, Ethan. Margaret stepped forward, her voice like steel. I want every penny accounted for, Michael. Or I'm calling my lawyer. The room felt like it was closing in, but for the first time, I wasn't alone in this fight. My family had shattered, but Margaret and Sarah were my anchor, and I wasn't backing down. The rain had slowed to a drizzle as we left my parents' Decatur house, the confrontation still ringing in my ears. Linda and Michael's weak excuses, claiming the $180,000 was for family expenses, felt like salt in an open wound. The forged $25,000 loans in my name burned even hotter. I drove back to my basement apartment, Margaret and Sarah following in their cars. My 2008 Honda Civic's headlights cut through the foggy Atlanta night, but my mind was a blur of rage and grief. 5 years of scraping by, believing their lies about being broke, and now this, fraud, betrayal, a family I didn't recognize. But in that Waffle House booth, with Margaret's fierce resolve and Sarah's steady hand, I'd found a spark of strength. I wasn't just a victim. I was going to fight back. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my apartment's cracked window, my eyes gritty from crying. My phone showed missed calls from Linda, Michael, and Ethan, but I ignored them. Margaret called at 8 a.m., her voice calm but determined. I've set up a meeting with Rachel Harper, a financial crimes lawyer in Midtown, she said. Can you be there at 10? I swallowed hard. I'm in, Grandma. Sarah texted, offering to join us. We're not letting them weasel out of this. I showered, threw on a thrift store blazer, and drove the 3 miles to Rachel's office, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and purpose. Rachel's office was sleek, all glass and steel, a far cry from my moldy basement. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with a no-nonsense vibe that put me at ease. I've reviewed Margaret's bank records, Rachel said, sliding a folder across her desk. Your parents received $180,000 over 5 years, wired directly to their joint account. They also took out $25,000 in loans under your name, with forged signatures. That's identity theft, Abigail. My stomach lurched. What else? I asked, my voice tight. Rachel's eyes narrowed. They funneled $50,000 into a failed food truck venture Ethan pitched last year. Another $70,000 went to a vacation home in Hilton Head. The rest? Renovations, luxury purchases, trips. I clenched my fists, picturing their new kitchen island while I'd eaten stale cereal. Sarah's voice was cold. They lived like royalty while Abigail starved. Margaret gripped my hand, her face pale. I should have checked with you directly, she said, tears welling. I failed you. I shook my head. You trusted them, Grandma. We all did. Rachel outlined our next steps, demand full restitution, starting with the $25,000 loans, and file a civil suit if they resisted. Criminal charges for fraud were on the table, but she advised starting with negotiation. "They'll buckle," she said. "The evidence is ironclad." That afternoon, I met Ethan at a coffee shop near Emory, his usual swagger gone. His eyes were red, his hands fidgeting with a straw wrapper. "Abby, I swear I didn't know," he said, voice cracking. "They gave me $1,500 a month, said it was from the business. I thought you got the same." I stared at him, the brother I'd envied for his easy life. "I was working 40 hours a week, Ethan. I had $150 in my account most months." He looked down, ashamed. "I'm done taking their money. I got a job at the campus bookstore. I want to help you fix this." For the first time, I saw him as an ally, not a spoiled kid. "Okay," I said softly. "But it's gonna be a long road." By the next week, I'd taken a bold step. I moved out of my basement apartment, signing a lease on a $1,200 a month one-bedroom in Virginia Highland, with hardwood floors and actual sunlight. Rachel's team sent a formal demand letter to my parents, listing the $180,000 and $25,000 loans, with a 30-day deadline. I also landed a job as a junior engineer at a tech firm in Buckhead, starting at $75,000 a year, a lifeline after years of scraping by. My parents' texts grew frantic, begging to talk as a family, but I wasn't ready. Margaret and Sarah stayed by my side, and Ethan's small gestures, like bringing me takeout from Zaxby's, showed he was trying. The road to justice was just beginning, but I was no longer the girl who believed their lies. I was building a life on my own terms, one truth at a time. 2 weeks after the Pierre disaster, I was settling into my new one-bedroom apartment in Virginia Highland, the hardwood floors a stark contrast to my old basement's moldy carpet. My $75,000 a year engineering job in Buckhead felt like a lifeline, but the sting of my parents' betrayal, $180,000 stolen, $25,000 in forged loans, still gnawed at me. Rachel, my lawyer, was pushing Linda and Michael to repay every cent, her demand letter a ticking clock. Ethan was stepping up, working at Emory's bookstore and texting me daily with support. Margaret, my grandmother, called often, her voice a steady anchor. But nothing prepared me for the bombshell she dropped one Sunday morning at her Macon home, 50 miles south of Atlanta. I drove down in my newly paid-off Honda Civic, the spring air thick with Georgia pollen. Margaret greeted me with her usual pecan pie, but her eyes were heavy, her hands fidgeting with a manila envelope on the kitchen table. "Abigail, sit," she said, her tone serious. Sarah, my aunt, was there too, her face grim. My stomach knotted. "What's wrong?" I asked, bracing myself. Margaret slid the envelope toward me. "I found this in my attic, buried in old files. It's about your parents, and someone else." My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing yellowed adoption papers from 1997. "Your parents had another child before you," Margaret said, her voice shaking. "A daughter, Claire, given up at birth. She's 28 now." My breath caught. "A sister?" I stared at the papers, the name, Claire Elizabeth, typed in faded ink. "Why didn't they tell me?" I whispered, my heart racing. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. "They told me she was stillborn," she said. "They lied to everyone, even me." Margaret's voice hardened. "They were young, broke, starting their real estate business. They gave Claire to a family in Savannah, claiming it was for her future. But they never told you, or her, the truth." I felt like the floor was crumbling. First, they stole $180,000 in forged loans. Now, they'd hidden a sister? Did Claire know about me? I asked, my voice cracking. Margaret shook her head. Her adoptive parents said her birth family was gone. "I tracked her down last week. She lives in Athens, 70 miles east. She's a nurse, single, and she wants to meet you." My mind spun. A sister I'd never known, erased by my parents' lies. "I need to see her," I said, a mix of excitement and dread flooding me. That Friday, I drove to Athens, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel. Claire met me at a cozy coffee shop off Broad Street, her brown eyes mirroring mine. "Abigail," she said, her voice soft but nervous. I nodded, tears welling. "Claire." We hugged, an awkward but warm embrace, like finding a missing piece of myself. Over coffee, she shared her story, raised in Savannah, always wondering about her roots, told her birth parents were dead. "I found a letter from Linda last year," Claire said, her voice tight. "She wrote that I was better off without them. No mention of you." I clenched my mug, anger flaring. "They hid you from me, too," I said. "And they stole $180,000 meant for my education." Claire's eyes widened. "They're monsters," she whispered. We talked for hours, piecing together our fractured family. The joy of finding her clashed with the pain of our parents' deception. "We're sisters," I said, squeezing her hand. "They can't take that away." Driving back to Atlanta, I felt a strange hope. My parents had shattered my trust, but Claire's existence was a gift, a new bond to rebuild on truth. Margaret and Sarah were right, I wasn't alone. This fight was far from over, but now I had a sister by my side. 3 weeks after meeting Claire in Athens, I sat in my Virginia Highland apartment, the morning sun filtering through new curtains I'd splurged $40 on, a small victory after years of pinching pennies. The sting of my parents' betrayal, $180,000 stolen, $25,000 in forged loans, still lingered, but finding Claire, my long-lost sister, had cracked open a door to something new. Rachel's legal fight was moving forward. Linda and Michael had paid off the $25,000 loans, and the first $20,000 of the $180,000 restitution was in my bank account. Ethan was texting me job updates from Emory, his bookstore shifts grounding him. Margaret and Sarah called daily, their support a lifeline. But as I sipped coffee, staring at the Atlanta skyline, I realized this wasn't just about money or even Claire. It was about rewriting what family meant to me. I'd spent years believing Linda and Michael's lies, thinking their "we're broke" mantra was truth while I survived on $150 a month. The revelation at Pierre shattered that illusion, but it also forced me to face a harder truth. Family isn't just blood, it's trust, respect, and honesty. They'd failed me, not just with money but by hiding Claire, erasing her from my life. "You're stronger than their lies," Sarah had said over dinner last week, her voice fierce. "You're building a family that's real." She was right. Margaret's unwavering love, Ethan's clumsy but genuine efforts, and Claire's shared pain were my new foundation. Meeting Claire had been a revelation. We'd stayed up late in that Athens coffee shop, swapping stories of our parallel lives, she, a nurse, wondering about her roots, me, an engineer, fighting for every dollar. "I always felt a piece was missing," Claire said, her eyes glistening. "Now I know it was you." Those words hit me hard. I'd spent 5 years at Georgia Tech feeling alone, but I wasn't. Claire's existence taught me that family could be reclaimed, not just lost. I wasn't replacing Linda and Michael, but I was choosing who deserved my trust. The hardest lesson was about forgiveness. I wasn't ready to forgive my parents, not yet. Their texts still came, pleading for family talks, but I kept my distance. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," Margaret told me, her voice soft over a phone call from Macon. "It means freeing yourself from their hold." She was right. Holding on to anger was like carrying a $180,000 weight, it exhausted me. Letting go didn't mean trusting them again, it meant reclaiming my peace. I started therapy, using some of the restitution money to address the anxiety their lies had buried in me. Each session peeled back layers of hurt, revealing a strength I hadn't known I had. I looked at my new apartment, my job offer letter pinned to the fridge, and thought of Claire's smile. This was my life now, built on truth, not deception. To anyone watching, if you've been betrayed by family, know this, you're not alone. Drop a comment, have you had to redefine family? Your stories keep me going. I'm not done fighting, but I'm learning that truth, however painful, is the foundation of something stronger. 6 months after that shattering night at Pierre, I stood in my Virginia Highland apartment, stringing fairy lights across my balcony for a small dinner with the family I'd chosen. My new life, $75,000 engineering job, a cozy one-bedroom with no mold, and $40,000 of the $180,000 restitution in my savings, felt like a hard-won victory. Rachel's legal pressure had forced Linda and Michael to pay off the $25,000 forged loans and commit to monthly repayments, with $140,000 still owed. Their texts had slowed, each one a cautious plea for reconciliation, but I kept them at arm's length. Claire, my newfound sister, was coming tonight, driving 70 miles from Athens. Margaret and Sarah were bringing dessert, and Ethan, now juggling bookstore shifts and classes at Emory, promised to show up with his famous queso dip. As I set the table, my heart swelled. This dinner wasn't just a meal, it was a celebration of truth. Claire's laugh filled my phone as we texted about her nursing shift. "Can't wait to eat something that's not hospital cafeteria food," she wrote. I smiled, thinking of our late-night talks, piecing together our stolen years. Margaret's wisdom from Macon echoed, "Family is who shows up, Abigail." She was right. Linda and Michael's lies, hiding $180,000, forging loans, erasing Claire, had broken my trust, but they'd also freed me to build something honest. Here's what I've learned, and I hope you take it to heart: check your finances, even with family. If I'd seen my parents' bank statements, I might have caught their fraud sooner. Set boundaries, say no to guilt trips from people who've hurt you. And if you're drowning in betrayal, find your anchors, like I found Margaret, Sarah, Claire, and even Ethan. Therapy helped me unpack the pain. It's worth every $100 session. To anyone watching, you're stronger than the lies you've been told. Drop a comment: have you rebuilt after a family betrayal? Your stories fuel me. I looked out at the Atlanta skyline, the fairy lights twinkling against the dusk. Claire arrived first, her hug warm and steady. "We're making our own traditions," she said, setting down a bottle of sweet tea. Margaret and Sarah followed, arms full of peach cobbler and laughter. Ethan burst in, queso in hand, joking, "I'm officially broke but happy." We clinked glasses, toasting to resilience and truth. This was my family now, imperfect, real, mine. If this story hit you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more. Let's keep building lives on truth together.